Hey everyone, today I want to talk about how seriously we need to stick to the written rules in Dungeons & Dragons. It's a pretty common discussion within the D&D space as to whether games should be played with the rules as written or if rules should be treated more as a guide. So let's go through the different versions of the game and see what they all had to say. Starting with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in 1979, page 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide says that the game is the thing, and certain rules can be distorted or disregarded altogether in favor of play. So there you have it, right there, 5 paragraphs in. Gary Gygax himself lets us know that an enjoyable game is the most important thing, and we should not be afraid to completely disregard the rules if necessary. Now, he specifically gives an example where the Dungeon Master has prepared an amazing dungeon crawl, and the players have been preparing for it as well. Everything is set up, and everyone is excited for this particular session, but the rules call for some wandering monsters to show up every now and then. He warns that this could completely disrupt the flow of the game that everyone was trying to play, because the characters would now have to expend resources and abilities in order to fight these wandering monsters, and they might have to regroup in order to try again, and then they might face more wandering monsters, and you never actually get to the dungeon crawl that you wanted to play in the first place. To that end, he says feel free to ignore those rules and skip the wandering monsters in favor of the game that your table wanted to play. Now, we all know that with great power comes great responsibility, so he also issues a word of warning that your players expect to play this game, not one made up on the spot. By the same token, they are playing the game the way you, their dungeon master, imagines and creates it. Being a true dungeon master requires cleverness and imagination which no set of rules books can bestow. In essence, you should lean into those aspects of being a dungeon master and not feel constrained by the rules. They are simply a tool to support the game. Now, 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons does not cover this with nearly the depth that we got with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, but in the introduction, it does add that a large portion of the book is devoted to discussions of the principles behind the rules. Along with this are examinations of the pros and cons of changing the rules to fit your campaign. The purpose of this book, after all, is to better prepare you for your role as a game moderator and referee. It goes on to say that the only thing that can make the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game right for all players is the intelligent application of DM discretion. So clearly, even in 2nd edition, the intention was for the Dungeon Master to be flexible with the rules and build a game that worked for their table, going so far as to stress how the rationale for the rules was provided so that you could better understand if a rule should be changed. 3rd edition really expanded on all of this. The Dungeon Master Guide begins with a statement that says you are the master of the game, the rules, the setting, the action, and ultimately the fun. Later on, it indicates that you are the final arbiter of the rules within the game. Good players will always recognize that you have the ultimate authority over the game mechanics, even superseding something in the rulebook. Good dungeon masters know not to change or overturn a published rule without a good logical justification. So just as Gygax said in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, you have complete freedom to change even the mechanics of the game, but never forget that the players are playing this game, not one you are making up, so you need to be consistent with any changes that you're going to make. 3rd edition even had an entire section in the Dungeon Master's Guide called Changing the Rules. In it, it points out that the ability to use the mechanics as you wish is paramount to the way role-playing games work, providing a framework for you and the players to create a campaign. So again, Dungeons & Dragons comes right out and grants you permission and perhaps even an obligation to change the rules. And it's not just talking about cursory items. It uses specific examples that include changing how initiative works, or modifying how characters learn spells, or even changing the underlying mechanics of the game. So more so than the other editions, 3rd edition actually provides the tools that you can use to decide if the rules should be changed and how you might go about doing it. Now, so far I've covered several versions of Dungeons & Dragons, but some of you might be saying, yeah, but what was the original intent? For that, let's go all the way back to the original Dungeons & Dragons Men and Magic book from 1974. In the introduction to this book, it says that the rules are guidelines to follow in designing your own fantastic medieval campaign. They provide a framework around which you will build a game of simplicity or tremendous complexity. Your time and imagination are about the only limiting factors. I think it's important to point out that the word guidelines is actually underlined in this book. It goes on to say that new details can be added and old laws altered so as to provide continually new and different situations. Clearly, the intention was that the rules are tools to help you build your game. You, as the dungeon master, might have a game that is vastly different from that of another table, but that is the entire idea. These rules were simply the foundation for you to build something that works for you. Moving forward again, Dungeon Magazine issue number 160 from November of 2008 has a section called Save My Game by Stephen Radney McFarland. This entire section section is devoted to the notion that role-playing games are only words on the page and abstract points of theory until a dungeon master breathes life into them. As the dungeon master, you are the gatekeeper of fun. You follow the rules not only because they are the rules, but because they create fun. If and when you decide to disregard the rules, you should do it for the same reason. It's your job to always look for the right thing to do, not necessarily the correct things the rules might state that you should do. So again, the dungeon master has complete control. And then finally, looking at the D&D 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, in the first chapter where it talks about how to be a dungeon master, one of the first things that it covers is how having fun is the most important goal, more important than the character's success in an adventure. And I think page 7 of this book perfectly summarizes what has been the consistent message in every edition of Dungeons & Dragons from the very beginning. Remember that the right way to play Dungeons & Dragons is the way that you and your players agree on and enjoy. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Until next time, take care.